All right, freaking A. So, all right, we're recording. So, welcome to another episode of Primary Market Podcast. Today we have an incredible new guest, an art lover and collector, Nicole Reber. Is that how we pronounce the last name?
Yeah.
Nicole Reber. Nicole, hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me here, Topper. I'm excited to talk about this topic. It's a big part of my life, but not something that I really chatted formally about
Totally.
before.
Yo,
Super.
I'm so excited to be connected with you and so excited to dig into it all. Um, so, I guess the best way for me to start is by telling you a little bit about the objective of this podcast. So, Primary Market, the podcast is for someone like me who always loved art but didn't know what the art market was, didn't know what it meant to be a collector, didn't know what it meant to be an artist, didn't know what it meant to be a gallerist. And so I like to kind of bring people like you on to give your perspective on your story, your biographical story, and then, how you got into art. And so the first things first is like, let's hear a little bit about Nicole. Like, where are you from? Like, did you
Yes.
always like art? Are you an artist yourself? Are you a collector?
Yeah. Well, I am originally from Ventura County. Was born in Ventura, raised in Oxnard and Camarillo, so not far from Los Angeles, an hour north. It's like the middle point. Camarillo, my hometown, is the middle point between LA and Santa Barbara. And I was artistic in the sense that I grew up playing piano really young, kind of competitively. And
Wow.
so I was always super into music. Never had like a skill set to draw um or do anything more refined, but I think I had like a really good sense of like originally curiosity for music, and then the music stuff kind of unlocked everything for me. I was really into and in high school, well, I like started out with Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters, and Dave Grohl being into hardcore. And what was like so cool about like that being like my first kind of like hero, like in third, fourth grade, I saw like the Learn to Fly video and his connection to grunge and like early emo because Nate from the Foo Fighters was in Sunny D Real Estate. All this stuff, like me,
What's Sunny D Real Estate?
they're like a famous emo band from the
Oh,
90s. They were also on Sub Pop, I want to say. But they like kind of set the stage for a bunch of like Taking Back Sunday or like Bright Eyes, and like
wow.
a lot of people reference them. They're amazing, really cool band. But like being into those bands, and because they came out of the hardcore scene, it was all about really naming your references and like sharing like who made you the artist that you were. So that was like really like always in all those interviews, and there was so much content around that band coming out of Nirvana that like then you also get into Kurt Cobain's journals, and he's writing his like 100 favorite albums, and I would like go on LimeWire and Morpheus and like download these things pre YouTube and like try
Wow.
to learn the references.
Wow.
So that was like a big thing. And then that got me into um my favorite brand in high school was Bright Eyes. And so like kind of there was like a trajectory onto there. I think I was super into Spin magazine. So like being into these music magazines got me like learning about creativity.
Wow.
And yeah, and so then I found like another favorite band, and then I was like, I just want to like maybe go to New York, and I wanted to start my own record label. That was like the degree I wanted to do in college. They had like a music business program at NYU, but I didn't get into that. I got into a poetry program, a writing program at Pratt, which is an art school in New York.
Yeah.
And I never visited the school until the day I moved there.
Wow.
And I didn't really know what going to art school meant. And I ended up in art school. And that was kind of the start of a whole nother journey for me.
Holy
It,
crap. What year was
yeah, it
that,
was
roughly?
totally crazy. '07. It was such a
Seven.
cool time because it was like the last window with like the yeah, yeah, yeahs. I remember like when we went to go tour colleges, I saw the yeah, yeah, yeahs play. Like they used to have this pool, public pool that was emptied out called McCarran Park Pool. And they would do
I lived right next to it.
yes, I was like at that Yeah 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 show in like '06, and I was like I just wanted to go to concerts. But then I
Wow.
ended up at art school and then I got exposed to fine art and that was like a different path. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay. So you go to art school and then what does that exposure look like? It's just like living in New York and being around all the artsy kids and like just like seeing the vibe of it all.
Yeah. You know, it you meet people, start to meet people in the dorms and you become friends with people and I think what was cool about art school is like people were really into all forms of creativity. So I started to like just find people to go to concerts with. And I had a lot of friends that were like graphic design majors, and sometimes for their coursework, they would need to have like text or make little books or whatever. And so we'd collaborate on zines and making books. And I was
Wow.
in this really unique poetry program that the major was only like 10 years old at the time. So it was kind of like a DIY major. Like they had some things that we were responsible to do, but somehow I figured out like early in art school that they were going to charge me the same price if I took like, I think like the minimum amount of credits to be considered a full-time student was like 13 or 14 credits. But if you were taking 18 credits, you were still paying the same amount. You weren't paying by credit, you were paying by full-time or part-time. So like me being just like the little alpha student that I was like, I'm just going to max out and do 18 credits every semester and take these art classes. So
Wow.
I started to take like photo, I took like wood block printing and silk screening and fashion classes. And
Wow.
yeah, I just was like, I couldn't paint, I couldn't do that stuff. So I knew I
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to take those electives. But I did these other things just to kind of figure out what was like a creative thing that I could be good at.
that is unbelievable. So as you're doing it, are you kind of developing your taste, or your taste was already developed? And like, how were you kind of being exposed to the world of fine art, the painting and sculpture and whatnot? Like, how did that kind of trajectory go?
You know, I met some kids right at the jump who I became friends with pretty quickly who were painters and illustrators. And so like part of like their coursework would to be to go to like Chelsea to go see a show and maybe like, see a couple shows and write an essay on it, or go to the Met and see a show and maybe do a live drawing there. And so the museums were and the galleries were like extensions of our classroom environment. And so friends were maybe more into fine art and going to openings, and you'd start to go. And so I was like 18 and 19 and just kind of tagging along with people that had that skill set and a little bit more like intelligence around that, and then and going to the shows. So it's super cool.
That is incredible. So,
Yeah.
what was like at that time? Were you kind of learning how to interpret and how to look at and understand and enjoy fine art, or like you just kind of wanted to hang in the scene, or like what was going through your head?
Yeah, I think there was a real great emphasis on the understanding portion of it because poetry has like such an intimate connection to fine art.
Mm,
Like there was a bunch of like my teachers, like I had like Anselm Berrigan was one of my teachers, and his dad Ted Berrigan was one of like the New York School poets, and like very dear friends with Allen Ginsberg, and so
wow.
there's all that relationship with like, hey, here we're gonna learn about Frank O'Hara and read lunch poems in class, but Frank O'Hara was like a curator at the MoMA, and he's writing these poems on his lunch while he's like out of work, like on his break from work, and then you'd go to the MoMA and you'd see whatever was there, and just kind of like the city would come alive. And I think there was a really cool emphasis, and like our teachers would encourage to go to poetry readings, to go to different things. And I think a lot of poets write about art, or artists show up to these things. And so the other cool thing about the style of classes when you go to art school, at least when I went, was there's like, we call it crit, and you have a critique, open critique, and people will read their work or present their work or present their art. And then everybody gives feedback, like honest
Oof.
feedback. And it's like a really, I think, a really great way to kind of grow up and also like be accountable for your work and be accountable for your ideas.
Mhm.
And so in doing that, it helped me gather like some sort of like language, or at least like a concept for how we talk about what we're into.
And then, so at that time, you were learning how to read poetry or how to write poetry. Like, what does that mean that you were majoring in it?
Yeah,
Oh,
so like the degree was like called writing for performance, publication, and media. So it was just kind of an altogether writing degree, but people, the second kind of half of college, you decided whether you wanted to do your thesis and write like a fiction book, nonfiction book, like be like long form writing or poetry.
hmm.
And if there was maybe like 30, 40 kids in the major, there were like six of us that were like, we're going to be poets and do this thing in poetry.
So cool.
Yeah. And so it was such an amazing time for me. And I got to go like kind of somehow I finessed with all these extra credits that I was doing to be able to go to like Paris for like a
Oh,
semester like in college, and that was also like a different level for me because then I went started backpacking Europe. And when I was backpacking Europe, I was going to like the big museums of Europe and seeing like the different
wow.
collections. And so like all this stuff was like happening for me, um that was such a like grand, education.
Yeah. An
Um,
art awakening.
yeah, it
And
was
so,
super cool.
so at that time, like, were you aspiring to be a collector or had you started collecting yet?
No, it was cool because I would like see shows and, people would sometimes it would be a show about a collector's collection. And so that would kind of start to inform. Not that often, but I think that started to unlock for me like at about 24, 25, because post college, I was making visual art and
Oh,
trying to be an artist myself. Like I made these like sign pieces with these texts that were really cool. And I had a zine with a couple of my best friends, like post grad, called Packet Biweekly, and we were publishing every 2 weeks for about like 3 years, doing like
wow.
studio visits and publishing like people's experiments that were happening in studio. It was kind of like our way to try to create the culture, like that critique culture, and like document what we were all thinking about as like young artists post college, and have that like accountability to like keep making art without like the structure of school. And so I was doing that, and then post that experience, like at about 3 years into that, I was like 26, just about turning 27. um I decided to move back to Los Angeles, and I had all of this art that I had made that people hadn't bought, and I had all of these things, and there's like a fine tradition in art of like the artist trade. So I asked a bunch of friends like, "Hey, will you trade me a piece for one of my pieces?" Or I had a little bit of money to buy some stuff from
Yeah.
friends. So it was when I moved here and did this big series of trades that like I all of a sudden had like 15 pieces, and I was like, this is really cool. I want more.
Yeah.
Um,
You're a collector now.
yeah, now I was a collector.
Wow. That was your
Yeah, so it all
initiation.
kind of started from the artist trade. It was like as I retired my artist hat, I took on the collector hat.
That is incredible. Okay. And so as that happened, like, did you start to think about like the works in the context of art history or in the context of the art market? Like, what was your awakening to that specific?
Well, let's see. I moved here when I was 27. Definitely between like 23 and 27, it was an interesting time. It would have been like 2013 to 2016 in the New York art market. And so this market was a unique one where a lot of really young kids out of school were making working and getting like there was just like a lot of speculation. And
Cool.
so like people was
I was
making these,
there.
yeah, it was really crazy. Like
You're
there
talking
was
about like
just,
Stillhouse era?
yeah, like I had, was going to those shows and stuff like that. I had like roommates that dated people from that, like, first year of college or whatever. You're like, oh my gosh. So I was going to those shows and seeing what was happening for the boys there. And I think like that helped me, like, I think at the time, like people were making like series driven work. Like, there's a demand for this. How can I create something that is different each time, but also like a duplicable style? And so I was making these text board pieces so that like they were very signature. Um, and so that allowed me to use the poetry part of my work because, like I said, I really can't paint or render. I made a couple paintings here and there, but it's just not my talent. And so I was seeing that I made this series, but like at the same time, I just don't think like there was like a cool kids club that I wasn't a part of, and it just didn't work out for me. Like I
Yeah,
was there, I was like in the right rooms, I was like making cool work, but it just, and being acknowledged and being in shows, but I think it
yeah.
was a boys club moment, and it was a lot of like these young guys getting the attention. And so, yeah, I just at a certain point too, not just even about that. I had friends that were just far more talented and had like the idea.
Oh.
Like there were people that had that more, they were better artists than I was. Like, and I was like, I can't compete at this. Like, I have a lot of skills, but I'm not like I don't have 40 years of ideas. I don't
Yeah,
feel happy
yeah,
going to the idea bank every day. And
yeah.
so, like, one of my best friends is a painter, Anthony Cudahy, who's had
Shout
a
out.
lot of, yeah, shout out. Anthony's had a lot of success and is one of the most prolific artists I've ever met. And
Wow.
he's been painting and drawing and making things every day since we were 18. And so, like, I saw like what it meant for
Yeah,
somebody who had like crazy talent and crazy work ethic. And even at that time, things hadn't picked up for him. And I was like, if he can't make it right now, like he's since had incredible success, but at that time we were still just struggling. It's like if he can't make it right now, this shit is not gonna work out for me. I'm like, sorry, like this guy is the talent. Like, fortunately,
yeah.
at all, like the dominoes laid as they were, and he's gotten incredible recognition, but I just was like, I have too many people in my life that are really good at this and it's not working out. So then I bounced and I was like, my mom's been a real estate agent for, um, you know, over 30 years. And she was up in Ventura County and she had like a health scare. And I took over her business and kind of like watched it for like a month. And I was like,
Wow.
hey, I think this could be something I could be good at. And I was starting to see like people have shows, put on work, wish I could buy it, and then a year later I just didn't have the money to
Yeah,
afford this stuff. So I was like, how can I like get into a place where I'm not promoting work, I'm actually buying work so that artists can continue to afford their studio and continue their practice, because I had done a lot of promotional work for artists and supporting them that way, but I wanted to like actually live with the art and support people more financially. So it meant me like getting into my own like financial well-being and health and like a better career.
hell yeah. That's really exciting, and I think like um, we all kind of find our footing within this art world according to our skills and capabilities. So that leads to the next question, which is so prevalent on your Instagram. It's like your elevated taste when it comes to architecture and interior design. And I honestly shout out to your fucking outfit yesterday on your stories. That dress was unbelievable. Like I'm not going to lay it
It's
on too thick, but you look
oh
really.
no, just like another it's fun. It's like another collection. It's that's like a fashion designer, Jacques Mus, and I've been collecting him since his maybe first or second collection, and I have a whole closet that's just dedicated to my archive of him, which I was very obsessive, like the
That's too
first
good.
of work that he made. Um, but then what was like crazy was like I met him when he opened a store here in Los Angeles, and he was like, dude, I know you've supported me, like you're one of the OGs. He literally was like, anything you want in the store, you can have for free. And I got to get a bag from him because I kind of like approached that fashion stuff with a similar like collector's mindset. Like at a certain point, I was like, all right, I'm going to be really all in on like 7 or 8 fashion designers that I like. And those are the things that I wear and buy. And then I don't really go outside that rails because otherwise I get tempted. So yeah, all of it kind of like it all is like a cohesive mindset allows me to like be in less trouble shopping.
And so, like, how do you think your aesthetic kind of ties together? So, like, does your taste in architecture tie to your taste in fine art, tie to your taste in fashion, et cetera, et cetera? Like, what
Yeah.
is, as your aesthetic, and like, how does it all tie together and the
Yeah.
origins?
I it's funny, like I mean, I love Hollywood Regency architecture as much as I love like brutalist architecture. So
Hmm.
I'm like I'm someone that loves like a variety of stuff. I can be into mid-century, I can be into something like organic. Um, I think when it comes to the art world and the architecture part of it, what's really cool is that people that are usually into collecting one thing, they're into like being really fastidious and thoughtful about other parts of their life too. So like in being into the art thing, I'll meet people who like it's just a whole lifestyle. Like the car's got to be right, the house got
Oh,
to the hair's got to be right, the makeup's got to be right. Like somebody that's like obsessive about one part of their life usually is obsessive and very aesthetic about another, is what I've kind of come to discover. And so it's been really neat because I'll get to meet people through art, or I'll just go meet somebody blindly through real estate, and I'm in intimate lives. I'm in their bedrooms, I'm in their houses, and I'm seeing like what they have in their places to like inspire them and what they cherish. And it's so cool because I really, it's a differentiating factor between me and a lot of people in my job that I understand furniture, art, and design. And they'll be like, dude, the other person I interviewed for this job had like no clue what's on my walls. I'm like, yeah, like that's actually like a painting by my friend. And oh my gosh, you have like I've gone into one of the coolest people I ever worked with. Shout out to this guy, Jeff Wasserman. Shout out Mr. Wasserman. He ran a silk screening studio for like 30 years in Santa Monica, and he was the West Coast printer for Leo Castelli Gallery. And
wow. Are you
yeah,
freaking
like,
kidding me? So he's an
yeah.
older cat.
Oh, yeah. And he was buying a house up in Ventura County. My mom and I sold him in his family house. He was like moving from here and just wanted to be a little further out from the city. And so we met him, and, you know, I start to hear his story. When he moved into the house, he had me back over when he had his collection up, and it was like a Warhol Mao in his office that he had printed himself. He had keyholes and ruchets, and he had
He's
all flat files full of the craziest posters from the whole Castelli archive. And it was like, just an average person in my job wouldn't have understood what that was. And
wow.
that's always like the most fun thing for me, when I can meet people and we have this in common. And that wasn't the most direct way that we were connected, but it just helps like reinforce our like work relationship and personal connection. It's really fun.
Yeah, and also exhilarating to be wowed by such exceptional, art, um,
Yeah.
and be around it, and like, and then that kind of leads me to the next question of like, what enthralls me about like thinking about someone like him is like today in LA, there's 20 Leo Castellis and 5,000 or 500 artists that theoretically, okay, maybe not that many, but the genius work is being created today, and it's here, and it's in these streets, and it's among us. And like, how to identify it? Um, pieces with historical significance or whatever that are being created today, like that to me is really exciting as well. Like being able to identify that current genius and like, what's your take on
Like it's funny. I love the skateboarder Jason Dill. And Jason Dill had like a metaphor for like young skaters, like when they were like filming their big video parts at like the peak of their like youth and health and they're skating, and he calls it like being in the window. And he'd be like, dude, you're in the window. This is your time to like really take it to the next level, when kind of like hyping up people for their skate parts and skate videos. And I think like I have now been adjacent to the art world now for almost 20 years. Like I'm 36, but I first started going to galleries at like 18.
it?
And so I have now had friends where they made work or they made stuff for years and maybe it wasn't popping, and then all of a sudden they find their voice and you're like, holy crap. Like I've had it happen a couple times where I've had friends or acquaintances and I didn't like the art, and then all of a sudden like you see a piece and you're like, whoa, they have unlocked and they are in the window. And when somebody's in the window, you can probably still afford it and get it. And then once they're out of the window, it's a different price point. There's different stakes. And so like I love keeping up with emerging art and catching when people are in the window of just like beginning to form some great ideas. I'd love to be at that place where I had like unlimited FU money to like get it once it's like a little more down the pipeline, or like everyone's like, oh yeah, that's the shit. But I think the thrill is like that moment when somebody unlocks a new idea and then you can be there to bear witness it. Like I remember seeing like Louisa Gagliardi. I have a piece from her. I remember seeing like her first show in a space where I had had like an art show like maybe 6 8 months prior, and I'd done these like crazy collaged Hawaiian shirts that were like, they were Hawaiian shirts that I sewed, but I'd done these paper collages and made the fabric, and they were all kind of have these like political socioeconomic tinges to them. They were like really kind of crazy. Like I had a uncle that was arrested on Dog the Bounty Hunter, and I just had screen grabs from the episode of Dog the Bounty Hunter. and like I printed them out and made it into a paper collage, scanned that on like a flatbed scanner, and then turned that into fabric and made that into a shirt. So
Wow.
like I had this show, and then like 8 months later, Louisa had her first show at this spot, and her art is so good. I can't even believe it, but probably could have afforded something at the time, but I just wasn't even thinking about it. And, a couple years later, it was like a different category, price point, and interest in the work. And so, but I remembered like being there and being like, oh my God, I would do anything to have one of these right now. I've
Wow.
had it a couple times with people, and yeah, that's kind of like what drew me to like my current life, is to just being able to like have a job where maybe I can tuck a little money away. And when I feel that way about an artist, I can be more apt to pull the
Pull the
trigger.
trigger.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is so dope. And like, what are some of the factors that help you identify that feeling? Because it's an exhilarating feeling for me too. Like that's why we do this podcast. Like really
Yeah.
just to talk to these sort of people and
Yeah.
to talk to the type of people who can identify it.
Yeah. Man, that's such a good question. I feel like that feeling is almost like hearing like a new favorite song for the first time. You're like, oh my God. And then you like need to listen to it like 20 times in a row. It's way easier to find a favorite song than a new artist in the window, but I think
Yeah.
it's the thrill of the chase that is fun for me and keeps me excited and, connected. I'm really like it's funny. I love the surrealists. I've always loved the surrealist, and so I think that I tend to gravitate towards things that have some surrealism in it. Portraiture and like just true like paint like representational painting is something I'm really attracted to because like I said I have no skill for it, so
Mm.
I like to sometimes I like to buy what I cannot make myself.
Whoa,
um that
that's amazing.
inspires me. Yeah. I did a lot of photo in college and was like a street did like street photography and worked in the dark room. I love like Bruce Davidson, like Brooklyn Gangs is like probably one of my favorite series of art ever. And so I love some work like that, collect that. I do a lot of ceramics. I have a lot of friends that make unique ceramics. That's kind of fun. But it's really just, I get a vibe and I feel like I've seen enough stuff to know kind of what's good.
Yeah.
And I just
Wow.
kind of go with
And,
that.
and so you gravitate toward um, ceramics. Elaborate a little bit on that. Like, you like sculptural works. You like what do you
Yeah,
like?
like I'm like looking right here at like my table. Like I have this is a friend, Vanessa Moshe. She's an amazing ceramicist and like she does these really cool. It's more like housewares, like it kind of my
Mm,
friend Lauren Elder, my
wow.
family table here. This is what else do I have? Here's like a candlestick Danny found for me uh at a ceramic spot. So I don't know, like I love ceramics. I love like the house thing. I think that like relates to the work part of my life. But
Yeah.
yeah, like Ben Saunders, he's a dear friend. I just got like Danny got one of his pots. He gifted us a pot. And we have maybe like 15 of his pots that we've collected over the years. So like I'll go in with certain people. Like I'm looking at my dining room right here. I have a couple pieces from this young painter, Erin Morris. I now have like three works from her, and she just with showed at Felix, and my dear friend Nina, who's helped me in work stuff for many years and runs her own gallery quarters. She put me onto Aaron's work like 3 4 years ago in like
Wow.
a small space. So I do kind of like I have gotten in the habit where I have like followed up and bought multiple pieces from people. Um, so it depends just on the price point. And then the bigger ones, I'll buy one big one and wait till the next day that I can do another. But I keep like a little running list of just people that I'd love to have works from. And, you know,
Wow.
there's also a time when you don't pull the trigger. And like that's like, oh, the worst lesson to learn as a collector. Like one of the biggest pains of this job, and that like it in similar to real estate, like a pain that I recognize in mistakes that my clients have made is like a lot of this stuff is one of one. And like if
Oh
you
man,
didn't buy that
absolutely.
painting, oh, it's so brutal. Like I thinking so clearly of an artist where it was like I had a chance to buy something and it was a departure from previous work. But then after the piece I didn't buy, the work took a totally different voice. And so it was like the last one, and I was like, oh, well, the other ones were really bright and colorful. This one's a little darker. And I just, was like,
You
it
understand
was
why?
yeah, and then it all changed, and it's been 5 years, and there's been no works there with multiple figures, and I want multiple figures in one of these, and so now I'm screwed, and, that is what that is. And so it's
Yeah.
also, like, knowing sometimes you as the collector, even though you've seen something from that artist and that's, like, your dream piece, there are just times where you have to buy something that's in that voice. It's not going to be the dream one. Every once in a while, you get the A piece from the show, and all the things work out, but it is so rare. And sometimes you still like if you like where they're at that window in their career, you better pick it up because you are not guaranteed that they are going to make work in that vein for X amount of years to come.
So
It's
true.
so sensitive.
Wow. And where do you turn to kind of find new artists?
I do go to a lot of shows. I think like socially too, sometimes I'll meet people. I find I like to go to the fairs and like I'll hit every fair, and I think like it just is helpful. Like I don't have as much time as I used to just be like going into every opening. But like I bought last year from like Post Art Fair, great artist Angela Wynn, and from Harlesden High Street, a gallery in England. And she's a local artist here in Los Angeles, and she just finished grad school at USC. And so now I'm like following her work and get to see more like, out and about. But like that was just like from a fair, and I instantly saw no, you're fine. I instantly saw her work and just like had a gravitation to it, and I pulled the trigger. I didn't know anything about the gallery or the artist. I was just like, this is,
Whoa.
yeah, like I am like good now. I've learned my lesson, but it's just kind of like, but that I could go to like five fairs and see one piece that makes me feel like that, and
Yeah. If
you know
that.
that's yeah, if that. So it really is just a time game. It's like it just takes time.
Incredible. Incredible.
Yeah.
So, and like now, I guess the next question is like, do you have any collecting ambitions? Or like, what's your take on your long-term strategy? Do you ever sell works?
Yeah, I've never sold anything that I've collected. Because a massive portion of like where my collection was based off of trades with friends and people that are like personal friends whose work that I own. It's now, perhaps more like valuable in the eyes of like an art market.
Yeah.
I just have all this stuff, and so not really like interested in it. All like lives in very public places. So I have a good amount of things here in my house, but a large portion of my collection is in my fiance's hair salon here in Los Angeles
Oh,
in the Arts District. And so
yo!
it's like
I
the
saw that on
decor for
Instagram.
the yeah, yeah, it's the decor for the salon. So I can't really like trade things in or out because it's a little personal.
Very.
Because people the staff likes coming back to these pieces.
Nice.
Clients get to see them. It allows artists to have their work exposed to many different people. I've had people like see art that I had exhibited in there and reached out and bought pieces from those artists before. So it's like my kind of way of like always having a collection on display and giving back is keeping it in like a public place like the salon. So yeah, right now like those are all mine, and I've been in like a place where I'll buy like, two, three pieces that are like a little bit more significant a year. I don't get a ton, but I get like quality, and or I'll wait and just kind of hoard a little bit of money for like exactly what's on my hit list. So I'm open to like the randomness, but I'm usually like working towards a goal of collecting somebody particular and building a relationship with the artist and their gallery to be like,
Wow.
hey, the next time they have a show, I would love to collect.
And
And
what percentage of those artists are LA based?
mm, gosh, I the last like two big things, Angela, I got a piece from Joseph Geegan's last show at Lomex. Those are both LA people. Angela was a stranger to me, but Joseph is somebody who's like my in my age bracket and I've known since I was like 21. So it was like
Yo.
15 years of friendship before there was just a moment where it kind of like work out to like get a piece.
By the way,
And
I probably met you like I was in New York City at that time too, like from 2001 to
yeah,
2019. So I'm sure we
oh,
crossed.
yeah, there has to be overlap. There has to be overlap. Yeah, I mean, my zine, we were always like at the printed matter art book fairs and really like big into the book fairs, and I was like
Wow.
deep in that scene. So yeah, that kept me like connected to the poetry writing people, but to the art people, and I met so many friends, and I think I had a lot of goodwill too because I have been an artist and like will always be artistic. I mean, I like to call myself a reformed poet. Like I like because I come from the sense that from the space of having made things and having supported a lot of people, I think it makes people feel comfortable to put exceptional pieces of art in my hands, knowing that it's protected and I'm not somebody that's like collecting for
Yeah,
profit.
to
Like
flip. Yeah,
collecting for vibes, and I don't really know what I'm gonna do with it outside of I just like living with pretty things.
yeah.
So that's
That's
it.
that's the most important. You know, you're very
Yeah.
important. You participating in that way is unbelievably important to the ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be cool one day, like, I don't know, to have something that's like important enough that you have like a little retrospective or somebody like care to like gather it all and like tell the story of it. I think like that is always so inspiring. Like I love people that have a legacy like that. You know,
Yeah,
that's like a goal to work
exactly.
towards. You know, for
Your lips
me, like
years. That's going to
yeah,
happen with you.
yeah, I'd love to help more artists. So I'm like, you know, buy a house with me. There's like it goes into a little fun. It helps other artists. There's one day I like that's a life goal for me is actually Jeff Wasserman, whose house I sold. That I was talking to about earlier.
Yeah.
When I sold him this house, he has like a crazy like 13 car garage. He's like a car guy, and
Wow.
then he also had a covered RV parking. So it was like a RV garage with like a big giant
Yeah,
um
yeah, I know those.
and like my like a life goal I have for myself is to have a house with one of those RV garages, not for an RV, but I would love to like have a guest house and like a at home like artist residency, you know, where like somebody lives there for like 6 months
Yeah.
and I get a piece and then
Yeah.
and like help out young artists that way and you know put on shows to like my sphere and put them on like that. Like that is like an absolute like total why thing for me in my success and like you know future success and dreams. Like I would love to do that.
Me too.
When I
I want to do a residency, so I want to talk to you about that off camera.
yeah, love to
But
do that.
I have to get rolling. But just one last thing. Do you have any tips for future collectors or artists or anything that you want to say to the art world in general or anything?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I love the long game of this passion and aspect of my identity. I love that like I have relationships now for 20 years, but I love that it can like connects me to people across ages, cultures, um, you know, like means, you know, like when you can get down with people and just like appreciate their heart and what they're trying to put out into the world, I just think it's super cool, whether it be like what they're into collecting or what they're into making. And like I love that there's not like an age that you have to stop being into this,
Yeah,
both in making stuff and in collecting stuff. So I really do think it's like a lifelong passion. And I like that because it is a small scene, there you really do have to treat people with respect and be ethical and build these relationships. And it's not for any other reason except for like being a good person, like a you know, maybe cool one day it can work out in your favor that you never like screwed anyone over and you like get a chance to like live with a piece of art that maybe you wouldn't have had a chance to because someone felt comfortable to put it in your hands for
oh,
safekeeping.
the best.
So that's like to me like I really take that seriously and I love being in the scene and yeah, I do think when you live with art, you're living with a lot of different energy and creativity. It's very inspiring to me. It makes me feel something every day and keeps me going. And like kind of is just the point of life is living with beauty. And so
Yeah,
I
and like
I
these artists,
can't handle a non-aesthetic life.
that is beyond evident. And so, Nicole, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to chat with me. It was so much
Yeah,
fun.
with the curiosity and thanks for giving this forum to like discuss this. Hopefully, like, you know, go out there, buy art. There's lots of art that you can buy that's not crazy expensive. I was at Felix. There was a lot of art under even 3K there. And I know it takes at certain, as you're coming up, that's a lot of money in this world, even 3K. But you save up, you put a little fund, cut down on some stuff that's unnecessary and like put it away to like help an artist and help yourself out by like living with something that's gonna like remind you of like that passion and setting goals. So that's what I say. Like go out there and ask the price of stuff. You might be surprised that you can start to collect sooner than you think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Nicole. I can't wait to hopefully meet you in person soon.
Yeah,
And
100%, dude. Have a great day and I will talk to you soon.
great. Thanks again.